If you live and breathe Chargers football, hit subscribe right now, smash that like button, and jump into this with me because something is happening in Los Angeles. This team is not moving like a franchise that wants to stay stuck in the wild card round. This team is moving like it knows the pressure is on, like it knows Justin Herbert has to change the story, like it knows the window is open and the excuses are gone. And that is why this offseason feels different. We are talking about a roster getting top 10 respect around the league, a major question mark on the interior offensive line, a real possibility that Keenan Allen could come back, and even draft signals that scream one thing loud and clear: the Chargers are trying to build this thing around Herbert the right way. So let me ask you right out of the gate, Bolt Nation, do you feel it too? Do you feel like this team is getting closer to becoming the real deal? Drop your take in the comments because this one matters. Let's start with the biggest picture. The Chargers are being viewed as one of the better rosters in football, even though they still have not gotten over that playoff hump. And that right there is the tension. That is the pressure. Joe Ortiz and Jim Harbaugh have put together wins. They have put together playoff appearances. That part is real. 22 wins and 2 playoff trips in their first 2 years together is not luck. That is structure. That is competence. That is a front office and coaching staff building something with a backbone. But let's not dance around it. None of that will fully satisfy this fan base until this team wins in January. Period. Justin Herbert is still carrying that playoff record over his head. And whether people want to be fair about it or not, the noise is there. The criticism is there. The national media is waiting for one more slip so they can say the same old thing all over again. Can Herbert win when it matters? Can the Chargers finish? Can this team actually break through? That is why being called a top 10 roster matters, because it tells you the talent is here. It tells you this is not some average team trying to fake its way into contender status. When healthy, this offensive line can be one of the best units in football. Rashawn Slater coming back healthy matters. Joe Alt being back matters. Those are not side notes, those are tone setters. When those guys are on the field, everything changes. Herbert gets a cleaner pocket. The passing game opens up. The run game gets nastier. And suddenly players like Ladd McConkey and Omari and Hampton start looking even more dangerous because the infrastructure around them is stronger. That is how jumps happen in this league. Not with hype alone, with talent, health, and timing all lining up at once. And on defense, there is still more than enough to work with. Khalil Mack is back. Tuli Tuipulotu is still one of the most intriguing edge threats on this team. Derwin James is still Derwin James, still the heartbeat, still the chaos engine, still the guy who can change a game with one play. So even with changes happening on the coaching side, there is a real foundation here. The big question is no longer whether the Chargers have enough talent to be dangerous. The question is whether they have finally built a team that can hold up when the lights get bright and the temperature drops. So tell me this, Bolt Nation, is this really a top 10 roster? Or are the Chargers still 1 or 2 moves away from being taken seriously as a legit threat? Now here is where the conversation gets a little uncomfortable. Because if there is one area of this offseason that still does not feel completely convincing, it is guard. And let's be honest, that matters a lot more than some people want to admit. The Chargers made a move at center with Ty Adash. Fine. There are bodies in the mix inside. Fine. But is there a clear, reliable answer at guard right now? That is where the anxiety kicks in. That is where fans start staring at the depth chart and asking, wait a second, is this really the plan? Because for all the excitement around the new offense, for all the hope around Herbert finally getting unlocked in a bigger way, none of that works the way it should if the interior offensive line is shaky. You cannot build a Ferrari and then ignore the engine block. You cannot talk about playoff football and then patch over the middle of the line with fingers crossed. That is why the Spencer Burford visit gets attention. Not because he is some home run signing. Let's be real, he is not. The recent performance does not scream elite answer. It does not scream slam dunk. It does not scream this problem is solved. So if fans are hesitant, that hesitation is fair. But here's the other side of it, and this is where the football logic comes in. Burford has experience in the Kyle Shanahan ecosystem, and now the Chargers are bringing in Mike McDaniel to reshape this offense. That matters. Scheme familiarity matters. Knowing the language, the timing, the footwork, the angles, the movement, all of that matters, especially when a staff is trying to install a system quickly and get the offense humming fast. So yes, there is a football reason for the interest. That part makes sense. But does it mean the Chargers should stop there? Absolutely not. And that is the tension. The move makes schematic sense, but it still does not feel aggressive enough for a team in this position. This is not a rebuilding team with time to experiment. This is a team under pressure. This is a team trying to maximize Herbert. This is a team that cannot afford to get cute in the trenches. If the Chargers are serious about going from dangerous to legitimate, then this guard situation has to be handled with urgency. So hit the like button if you are still riding with this offseason, and let me know in the comments right now, from 0 to 10, how much do you trust the Chargers' plan at guard? And be honest, would Burford be smart depth? Or would that be another sign that this team still is not aiming high enough? And then there is Keenan Allen. Man, this one hits differently, because this is not just about nostalgia. This is not just about bringing back a familiar name so fans can feel good for 5 minutes. This actually makes football sense. If Mike McDaniel's goal is to make life easier on Justin Herbert, create easier completions, get rhythm into the offense, and give the quarterback reliable answers over the middle of the field, then why would Keenan Allen not be part of that conversation? He may not be the same vertical threat he once was. Fine, nobody is pretending otherwise. But route running, feel for space, tough catches in traffic, being exactly where the quarterback needs him to be, that still matters. Actually, in a lot of ways, it matters even more in an offense trying to become cleaner and more efficient. And look at the receiver room. There is talent there, yes, but there is also uncertainty. If a major decision is coming on Quentin Johnston, then this room could shift in a hurry. Suddenly, the idea of bringing Keenan back is not just sentimental, it is practical. It is about giving Herbert a dependable chain mover, a player who understands leverage, understands game situations, understands pressure, and can still help stabilize an offense going through a transition. That is the difference between a luxury move and a useful move. This would be useful. Very useful. Of course, none of this is automatic. He has to want to keep playing. The money has to make sense. The fit has to line up. Those are the facts. But once you move past the facts and get into the read of the situation, the idea becomes hard to ignore. Because the Chargers do not just need talent. They need trust. They need reliability. They need players who can help Herbert play faster and freer. And Keenan Allen still feels like somebody who could do exactly that. So tell me, should the Chargers bring Keenan back? Or is it time to chase a different answer at wide receiver? And finally, let's talk draft, because the signals coming out of this offseason do not stop with free agency. The draft buzz matters too, especially when the projections start pointing in a very specific direction. One recent mock had the Chargers taking wide receiver Omar Cooper Jr. in the first round and offensive lineman Emmanuel Pregnon in the second. Now hold on, because this is where the bigger story starts to come together. It is not just about the names, it is about the message. If that kind of draft approach is even close to what this front office is thinking, then the Chargers are telling you exactly what they believe this team needs most. More support around Justin Herbert and more stability up front. That is not random. That is not smoke. That is a philosophy. A receiver in round 1 would add another weapon. More speed, more juice, more life to the offense. An interior lineman like Pregnon in round 2 would say the team understands it still has real work to do in the trenches. And Pregnon is especially interesting because the scouting profile on him points to a guy who is experienced, durable, and ready to play. In other words, not just a project, not just a body, a possible plug-and-play answer. And if the Chargers are targeting players who can help right away, that tells you everything about the urgency inside this building. They are not acting like a team that wants to wait 2 or 3 years. They are acting like a team that believes the time is now. Now let's be clear. A mock draft is still a mock draft. Nothing is official. Nothing is guaranteed. But when the free agency moves, the roster questions, and the draft projections all start pointing in the same direction, it becomes easier to read the bigger picture. The Chargers want to protect Herbert. They want to give him better answers. They want this offense to become more complete. And if they actually pull that off, then all of a sudden the conversation around this team changes in a hurry. That is why this offseason matters so much. This is not just about collecting names. This is about building the version of the Chargers that can finally shut everybody up. The version that stops being exciting in theory and starts being dangerous in reality. The version that does not just get to January, but survives January. That is the mission. That is the pressure. That is the opportunity. So if you are riding with the Chargers, if you believe this team is on the verge of something bigger, make some noise in the comments. Share this with another Chargers fan and tell me which move matters most. Is it the roster strength, the guard question, the Keenan possibility, the draft direction? Because one way or another, Los Angeles is sending a message. The only question now is whether this is finally the year that message turns into a breakthrough.